Jnanakosha, Puranas, Introduction.
सर्गच्च प्रतिसर्गच्च वंशो मन्वन्तराणि च वंशानुचरितं चैव पुराणं पञ्चलक्षणम्.
Matsya Purana. Lomaharshana and the other sages. There was a forest known as Naimisaranya. Many years ago, several sages organized a yajna in the forest. After the sacrifice was over, the assembled sages told Lomaharshana, "You have recited to us many Puranas. These accounts are so sacred that we would like to hear them once more. Please satisfy our thirst for knowledge. I will recount for you the most holy of all the Puranas," replied Lomaharshana. "This is the great Matsya Purana, told by Vishnu to Manu. Prepare your minds, for I am about to begin." Vishnu and Manu. There used to be a king named Vaivasvata Manu. He was the son of the sun god Vashvana. When it was time for Manu to retire to the forest, he handed over the kingdom to his son Ikshvaku. Manu then went to the foothills of Mount Malaya and started to perform tapasya, meditation. Thousands and thousands of years passed. Such were the powers of Manu's meditation that Brahma appeared before him. "I am pleased with your prayers," said Brahma. "Ask for a boon." "I have only one boon to ask for," replied Manu. "Sooner or later there will be a destruction, pralaya, and the world will no longer exist. Please grant me the boon that it will be I who will save the world, and it begins at the time of the destruction." Brahma readily granted this boon. Days passed. On one particular occasion, Manu was performing ablutions in a pond near his hermitage. He immersed his hands in the water so that he might offer some water to his ancestors. When he raised his cupid hands, he found that there was a minnow safari swimming around in the water. Manu had no desire to kill the minnow. He placed it carefully in his water pot, Kamandalu. But the minnow started to grow, and within a day it was 16 fingers in length. "Save me, king," said the fish. "This water pot is too small for me." Manu then placed the fish in a vat. But the fish continued to grow, and within a day it was 3 hands in length. "Save me, king," and the fish said the fish, "This vat is too small for me." Manu put the fish in a well, but the well soon became too smaller for the fish. Manu transferred the fish to a pond, but the pond was also too small for the fish. Manu now removed the fish to the holy river Ganga, but even this was too small for the fish. Finally, Manu transferred the fish to the ocean. There the fish grew so much that it soon occupied the entire ocean. "Who are you?" asked Manu. "I have never seen or heard of such wonders. Are you a demon that is deluding me with its illusion?" "No, I do not think that you are a demon. You must be the great Vishnu himself. Please tell me the truth and satisfy my curiosity." Vishnu then revealed that it was indeed he who had adopted the form of a fish. He told Manu that the earth would soon be flooded with water. Vishnu had got a boat built by the gods. When the earth was flooded, Manu was to place all living beings in the boat and thus save them. Vishnu would himself arrive in his form of the fish, and Manu was to tie the boat to the fish's horn. Thus the living beings would be saved. And when the waters of the flood receded, Manu would populate the world afresh and rule over it. Vishnu disappeared, and for 100 years there was a terrible drought on earth. The drought led to famine and people died of starvation. Meanwhile, the sun blazed in fury and burned up the entire world. When everything had burned to ashes, dark clouds loomed in the sky. These are the clouds that appear at the time of destruction, and there are 7 classes of such clouds known as Samvrata, Bhimanandana, Drona, Chanda, Valaka, Vidyut, Pataka, and Kona. From the clouds, rain began to pour, and soon water engulfed the entire earth. The land mass was flooded. As instructed by Vishnu, Manu gathered together living beings inside the boat, and when the fish appeared, he tied the boat to the fish's horn. What do you think Manu used? A rope? He used a gigantic snake. While the boat was thus tethered and dragged around by the fish, Manu asked Vishnu several questions. The answers that Vishnu provided form the text of the Matsya Purana. Let us start with the account of the creation. Creation. In the beginning, there was nothing in the universe. There was only darkness and the divine essence, Brahma. It is impossible to describe the Brahman. It has no traits that can be described. When the time came for creation to start, the Brahman removed the darkness and divided itself into 3. These 3 parts came to be known as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The first object that was created was water, and Vishnu slept on this water. Since Nara means water and Ayana means resting place, Vishnu is accordingly also known as Narayana. In this water next appeared a golden Hiranya egg, Anda. The egg shone with the radiance of 1,000 suns. Inside the egg, Brahma created himself. Since he effectively created Bhuva, himself, Swahavayam, Brahma is also known as Swayam Bhuva. The egg, you will remember, was golden. Garbha means womb, and since Brahma was born inside a golden egg, he is also known as Hiranyagarbha. For 1,000 years, Brahma stayed inside the egg. He then split the hell into 2 and emerged out. Heaven was made from one half of the shell and the earth from the remaining half. All the land masses, the oceans, the rivers, and the mountains had been inside the egg in embryonic form. Brahma made them manifest. The sun was also born. Since he was the first being to be born, he is known as Aditya. The word Mrita means dead. Since the sun was born when the egg died, the sun was also known as Martanda. Brahma's first act was to meditate. It was while he was meditating that the Vedas, the Puranas, and the other Shastras emerged from Brahma's mouth. 10 sons were also born to Brahma. Created from Brahma's mental powers, they all became sages. Their names were Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulatsya, Pulaha, Kratu, Pracheta, Vasistha, Bhrigu, and Narada. There were other 2 who were born. Daksha was born from Brahma's right toe, and the god Dharma was born from his chest. But for further creation to continue, it was essential that created beings should have proper mothers and fathers. Brahma accordingly created 2 beings from his body. One was male and the other was female. The male half was named Swayambhu Manu and the female half was named Shatarupa. Shatarupa is also referred to as Savitri, Gayatri, Saraswati, or Brahmani. Since she had been born from Brahma's body, she was like Brahma's daughter. In fact, Vasistha and the other sages who were Brahma's sons welcomed her as their sister. But Shatrurupa was so beautiful that Brahma fell in love with her and wished to marry her. Shatrurupa circled Brahma and showed her respects to him. When she stood in front of him, Brahma gazed upon her with the face that he had. But when she went and stood behind him, Brahma could see her no longer. Another head with another face therefore sprouted behind Brahma's first head, so that he might be able to see Satrupa. In similar fashion, a head sprouted to Brahma's first head, so that he might be able to see Shatrupa. In similar fashion, a head sprouted to Brahma's right and another on one to his left. And when Shatrupa rose above him, a head sprouted towards the top as well. Thus it was that Brahma came to have 5 heads and 5 faces. Brahma married Satrupa, and they lived together as man and wife for 100 years. Their son was named Swayambhu Manu. Hearing the account, Vaivasvata Manu exclaimed, "But what you have just said is truly amazing. How could Brahma have married his own daughter? Surely that is a sin." "Perhaps," replied Vishnu, "but it is not for humans to judge the actions of the gods. How could creation proceed if Brahma did not marry Shatrupa?" To continue with the account of the creation, Brahma created a sage named Sanat Kumara and Shiva. Brahma asked Shiva to help him in the act of creation. "Why don't you create some beings as well?" asked Brahma. Shiva compiled and started to create. But all the beings that he created were just like him in appearance, that is, they were all immortal. "What are you doing?" asked Brahma. "Don't create immortal beings, create mortal ones instead." "That I refuse to do," retorted Shiva. "If I am to create, I shall create only immortals." "Please do not create then," requested Brahma. "I will take care of creation myself." Swayambhu Manu performed very difficult tapasya and obtained a wife named Anati. Swayambhu Manu and Ananti had 2 sons named Priyavrata and Uttanapada. From Uttanapada was descended Prachina Varahi. Prachina Varahi married Savarna, the daughter of the ocean, and they had 10 sons. These sons were known as the Prachetas. The 10 Prachetas married a woman named Marisha. That is, all of them had the same wife. Daksha was the son of the Prachetas and Marisha. Daksha's descendants. Daksha married Panchajani. Daksha and Panchajani had 1,000 sons. These were known as the Haryakshas. Daksha asked his sons to create more living beings. But the sage Narada came and told the Haryakshas, "You can't possibly create living beings unless you know where they are going to live. Have you explored the universe that your creations are going to populate? Why don't you start out on a voyage of discovery?" The Harakshas did this and have never been heard of since. They did not return. Daksha and Panchajani now had another 1,000 sons. These were named the Shavalas. Narada asked the Shavalas also to explore the universe, and they too disappeared. 60 daughters were next born to Daksha and Panchajani. 10 of these daughters were married to the god Dharma, 27 were married to the moon god Chandra, and 16 were married to the sage Kashyapa. The remaining daughters were married to various other sages. The 13 daughters who were married to Kashyapa were named Aditi, Diti, Danu, Arishtha, Surasa, Surabhi, Vinata, Tamra, Krodavahasha, Ira, Kadru, Vishwa, and Muni. Aditi's sons were known as the Adityas. There were 12 of them, and they were named Indra, Dhata, Bhaga, Swastha, Mitra, Varuna, Yama, Vishwavanas, Savita, Pusha, Amshuman, and Vishnu. These were the gods. Diti's sons were the Daityas, demons. There were 2 of them named Hiranyaksha Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. Their sons also came to be known as the Daityas. Hiranyaksha's sons were Uluka, Shakuni, Bhuts, Santapana and Mahanabha. Hiranyakashipu's sons were Prahalada, Anuhalada, Samahlada and Halada. Prahalada's sons were Virochana. Virochana's son was Bali and the Bali's son was Vanasura. Danu had 100 sons. These and their descendants were known as the Danavas, demons. Chief among the 100 sons was Viprachit Maya. The architect of the demons was descended from this line. Tamra had 6 daughters. These were the mothers of the birds and goats, horse, sheep, camels and donkeys. Vinita had 2 sons, Aruna and Garuda. Aruna's sons were Sampati and Jatayu. Both Surasa and Kadru gave birth to snakes, Nagas, Sarpas. Krodavasha was the mother of Rakshasas, demons, Surabhi of cows and buffaloes, Muni of Apsaras, dancers of heaven, Arishta of Gandharvas, singers of heaven, Ira of trees and herbs, and Vishwa of Yakshas, demigods. The Maruts. Although the gods and the demons were cousins, they did not like each other and fought amongst themselves all the time. Many Daityas were killed by Vishnu and the other gods. Diti was disconsolate to see her children suffer thus. She resolved that she would meditate so as to obtain a son who would be so powerful that he would kill Indra, the king of the gods. There was a Tirtha, place of pilgrimage, named Swayamantha Panchaka on the banks of the sacred river Saraswati. Diti went there and started to pray to the sage Kashyapa. She lived on roots and fruits and meditated for 100 years. These prayers pleased Kashyapa. Ask for a boon, he said. Please grant me a son who will kill Indra, replied Diti. It shall be as you wish, said Kashyapa. But there are some conditions. You will have to live in this hermitage for 100 years more. Throughout these 100 years you will bear the baby in your womb. But there are certain conditions of cleanliness that you must observe. You must not eat in the evening, nor must you sleep under a tree at night. Exercise is not permitted in any form. Do not sleep with your hair unbraided or without having had a bath. If you can observe these rules for 100 years, you will have the son you wished for. Kashyapa went away and Diti began to observe the rites that the sage had prescribed. But Indra had got to know what was afoot, and he was naturally in no mood to permit the birth of a son who would be the cause of his own destruction. He hung around Diti's hermitage, pretending to serve his aunt. He brought her firewood and fruit and served her in other ways. But in reality, he was merely waiting for an opportunity. He was waiting for the moment when Diti would fail to observe the norms of cleanliness that had been laid down for her. 99 years and 362 days passed. That is, only 3 days were left for the period of 100 years to be over. Diti was tired on one particular occasion. Since the period of her ordeal was soon to end, she had also become somewhat careless. She fell asleep without washing her hair. What was worse, she went to sleep without having braided her hair. This was an act of gross uncleanliness. Indra seized his tongue. Since Diti had committed an unclean act, her defenses had been lowered. Indra entered Diti's womb in a trice. Indra had a wonderful weapon named Vajra. With the Vajra, Indra sliced the baby in Diti's womb into 7 parts. These parts started to cry. Ma Ruda, said Indra, don't cry. But the parts continued to cry. Indra therefore chopped up each of the parts into 7 more sections, so that there were 49 parts in all. Since Ziti had failed to observe the prescribed rites, these 49 sections were no longer a threat to Indra. When they were born, they came to be known as the Maruts from the words Indra had used in addressing them. They were elevated to the status of gods and became Indra's friends and constant companions.